A new leader, an auxiliary bishop from Baltimore, is named as the head of the diocese of Wheeling-Charleston in West Virginia. We'll introduce you to Bishop Mark Brennan. Working together, what Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says about a preliminary budget agreement between the president and House Democrats. Parting message, analysis of remarks by Dr. Leana Wen on why she left Planned Parenthood. And patroness of Europe, a look at the life of St. Brigid of Sweden on her feast day. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby. Pope Francis appoints a new bishop to take over West Virginia's scandal-plagued diocese. Bishop Mark Brennan will soon be leading the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston. The former bishop there is accused of sexual and financial misconduct. Correspondent Jason Calvi joins us now. Jason?
Wyatt, a Vatican investigation found the former bishop, Michael Bransfield, spent diocesan money, lots of it, on food, liquor, luxury items, as well as personal gifts to some church leaders. Investigators deemed allegations credible that Bransfield harassed with sexual innuendo and suggestive actions. Last week, the Pope banned that bishop from serving publicly. Today, a 72-year-old Baltimore auxiliary bishop promises to rebuild trust. Pope Francis sends in Bishop Mark Brennan to a scandal-rocked diocese.
I want you to know how acutely aware I am of the deep disappointment and pain that you have experienced as a result of your former bishop's misdeeds.
A church investigation accused that former bishop, Michael Bransfield, of sexual harassment and living an extravagant lifestyle with church money.
Around the state, it's going to be difficult around the diocese for people to be able to start investing both financially and in terms of their effort in the diocese again until this trust is restored.
Matthew Vester teaches at West Virginia State University. He's a member of a lay group that called for rooting out corruption in the diocese.
This is a crisis that will be resolved not simply by institutional and structural responses, but also by a spirit of encouraging authentic Christian discipleship amongst the faithful and encouraging reverence for the sacraments, for example, particularly the Holy Eucharist.
Today, the man tasked with rebuilding trust urges his new flock to keep the faith.
Our faith does not depend on one individual. Our faith is in God, and our faith is in Jesus Christ. And we believe this is the church he founded, and stay with us. Help us to make things better.
A message for the 77,000 Catholics in West Virginia.
I'm not a magician. I'm not a wonder worker. I'm your brother in Christ, and I'm willing to work hard with you to make this corner of the Lord's vineyard a place of faith as steadfast as the mountains.
Brennan becomes the 9th bishop of the diocese on August 22nd, the feast of the Queenship of Mary. He was born in Boston. The family moved here to D.C. His father was a World War II vet, was the lead painter at the White House. The Archbishop of Washington ordained Brennan a priest in 1976. He served in D.C. parishes for 40 years. Then Pope Francis named him an auxiliary bishop in Baltimore in 2016. Wyatt?
So, Jason, will this new Bishop Brennan have any power over Bransfield?
Well, the Pope says that Bishop Bransfield, the former bishop in West Virginia, cannot live in the diocese. That's the one and only diocese in the state. Bishop Brennan, the new bishop, will help the Vatican figure out ways that Bransfield can make amends. Bishop Brennan says he first wants to talk to priests. He wants to talk to the Financial Council, as well as some of the victims.
And we'll continue to follow that. I'm sure so many in the diocese are ready to turn the page on a new chapter there. Correspondent Jason Calvi reporting. Thanks, Jason. And stay with EWTN News Nightly, as well as Catholic News Agency and the National Catholic Register, for continuing coverage of the new bishop of Wheeling-Charleston. A big deal to avert a big crisis. Congressional leaders from both parties and the White House reach a sweeping budget agreement that would also lift the debt ceiling past next year's election. But there are still maybe some hurdles. President Donald Trump announces a bipartisan 2-year budget deal in a tweet Monday evening, calling it a real compromise. The deal would raise spending limits by $320 billion and avoid a looming fiscal crisis by suspending the debt ceiling for 2 years until after the 2020 elections. Earlier Monday, the president hinted at a final deal.
Secretary Mnuchin is talking about having very good talks with the Speaker of the House with Nancy Pelosi. We're having very good talks with Chuck Schumer.
Discussions between House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin were key, but the deal still needs the approval of the full Congress, and fiscal conservatives are not happy with billions in added spending.
I have some concerns. I believe that we have to be focused on fiscal responsibility. It's one thing for Republicans to talk about it, but we've got to live up with $22 trillion in debt and the deficits that have been out of control.
Some Democrats worry the proposal doesn't do enough to stop the Trump administration from redirecting funds to the president's proposed border wall. Still, Speaker Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell say their chambers will move on the legislation before lawmakers leave for a 6-week recess on Friday. President Donald Trump tells a group of young conservatives his agenda is working, and he predicts a tremendous victory in 2020. The president also offers a lesson in religious freedom.
In America, we don't worship government, we worship God. We believe in religious liberty, the right to free speech, and the right to keep and bear arms.
The president spoke at a teen summit organized by Turning Point USA, which supports free markets and limited government. Washington is preparing for testimony tomorrow from former special counsel Robert Mueller. White House advisor Kellyanne Conway says the president is not worried.
The president has zero concerns except that the taxpayers are on the hook again for this fantasy that never came true for the Democrats who promised all of you, and sometimes with your help, that there would be criminal conspiracy and collusion.
The Justice Department tells Mueller not to stray beyond the report on Russian election interference, including not discussing information redacted from what he released to the public. The Senate confirms Army veteran Mark Esper as Secretary of Defense. Esper passed on a vote of 90-8. The vote ends a stretch of 7 months where the Pentagon did not have a permanent leader. Esper replaces James Mattis. He stepped down on New Year's Eve.
The yeas are 97, the nays are 2. The bill is passed.
The Senate passes a bill to extend compensation for September 11th first responders until the year 2092. The measure puts money back into a fund set up shortly after the terror attacks. It will help first responders who suffered illnesses, injuries, and other medical issues. The bill heads to President Trump's desk. Boris Johnson is confirmed as the next leader of the Conservative Party and British Prime Minister. President Trump says on Twitter, Johnson will be great.
We are once again going to believe in ourselves and what we can achieve, and like some slumbering giant, we are going to rise and ping off the guy ropes of self-doubt and negativity with better education, better infrastructure, more police, fantastic full fibre broadband sprouting in every household. We are going to unite this amazing country.
The victory makes it more likely Britain could leave the European Union in October without a withdrawal agreement. Johnson replaces Theresa May, who stepped down last month. The Catholic Church in Germany last year lost more than 200,000 members. The head of the country's bishops' conference calls the numbers worrying and says the church needs to be more self-critical and constructive. The Protestant Church in Germany also lost more than 200,000 members in 2018. The bishops in Puerto Rico announced they will hold a 24-hour prayer service amid protests and governmental instability in the U.S. territory. It starts this Friday evening with Mass and adoration at the National Sanctuary of Mary, Mother of Divine Providence in San Juan. The territory's bishops emphasize the encounter will be an opportunity to pray and find ways to help with Puerto Rico's, quote, complicated social, political, and economic situations. President Trump held his first face-to-face meeting yesterday with Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan as the two countries work to mend relations. As we reported, topics included counterterrorism and trade, and after some public disagreements between the countries, the two leaders appeared to be in good spirits during their meeting. Joining us now is Farahnaz Ispahani. She's a former member of the parliament in Pakistan. She's also a senior fellow at the Religious Freedom Institute and a global fellow at the Wilson Center. Farah, welcome back. What did you think about the president welcoming the prime minister to the Oval Office?
It was a little shocking for Pakistan watchers and unprecedented because President Trump has actually been very strong about Pakistan's role in supporting terrorism, in supporting terrorist groups that have attacked American servicemen, that have killed Americans in India in the Mumbai attacks. So he's also, his administration has suspended aid, military and civilian, to Pakistan. So it was quite a surprise.
And because of all those reasons, because of the attacks, there's been strained relations between the U.S. and Pakistan on a number of all those issues. What do you make of the timing of this meeting? Why did this happen now?
Well, after Osama bin Laden was found in Pakistan, many people in the U.S. administration and people who are part of the establishment thought now America will move on from Pakistan's lies. But the U.S. is having an issue with its Afghan peace policy. They are failing with the Taliban, basically, because the Taliban have been just waiting for the U.S. to leave, and they want to form another Islamist Sharia state like they did before. And we remember, right, Wyatt? I mean, there's stonings of children, of killing women, the atrocity of that administration. So, and they're refusing to talk to the Afghan government, which was democratically elected, and the U.S. oversaw those polls. So the bottom line is that it's floundering. The peace process is floundering, and the United States now feels maybe Pakistan, which has aided and abetted the Taliban all these years, maybe we really need to get them involved.
It was interesting because when you think about some of those issues, because Trump and Khan discussed working together to bring peace and stability to the region, but yet out of all that, they didn't mention, or I don't remember them mentioning, the issue of religious freedom, such a key issue. Why do you think that is so significant when you think about that region to ensure religious freedom?
Well, this administration has done more for religious freedom, putting it on the map. Secretary Pompeo at the State Department, President Trump in the White House. We have never seen anything like it. And it has been so welcome for people of faith everywhere, for human rights activists everywhere. So coming on the heels of the State Department ministerial on religious freedom, this was shocking. Pakistan has the worst blasphemy laws in the world. One Asia Bibi, the poor Catholic woman who was now taken out of Pakistan to safety, has left. But there are 200 other Asia Bibis being persecuted because of their faith. So it is impossible for a government like Pakistan, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, which the constitution, the laws, everything works against religious freedom as we know it here in the United States. How can they make peace?
So important that we continue to highlight this, and I'm sure that the State Department will continue to work on this. I know you had mentioned you were at the Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom last week. Farahnaz Ispahani, Global Fellow at the Wilson Center and Senior Fellow at the Religious Freedom Institute. Thanks so much for coming in today.
Thank you, Wyatt.
Coming up, analysis of paid family leave and what it would mean for new parents. Welcome back. This month, Oregon joined the growing list of states with paid family and medical leave laws designed to allow workers to take care of a seriously ill family member or bond with newborns or newly adopted children. Oregon is now the 8th state to do so, joining Connecticut, Massachusetts, Washington, New York, Rhode Island, New Jersey, California, and the District of Columbia. Joining us now is Aparna Mathur, resident scholar with the American Enterprise Institute. She's director of the AEI Brookings Paid Family Leave Project. Aparna, welcome into the broadcast.
Thank you so much for having me back.
What are the benefits of paid family leave and who benefits the most?
Right, I mean, that's a great question which we've been researching, and fortunately we have a ton of research to show that the benefits of paid family leave accrue to families as a whole. You look at women's labor force participation, that tends to go up. You look at their earnings, the gap between father and mother earnings tends to decline as women are more active in the labor force. There are huge benefits to maternal and child health. There's better bonding with parents. So, if you think of it, it's both an economic issue and a family issue. It affects the economy, but it's also hugely beneficial for families.
So I mentioned about who benefits the most, but with this kind of leave, who hurts the most?
Access to leave has been shown to actually help people who are more disadvantaged, and the lack of paid leave actually hurts people who are the most vulnerable. So if you look at low-wage workers, they're the least likely to have access to paid leave, and they're the ones who are rushing back to work 2 weeks after having a baby, or not having access to any pay at all when they're forced to take time off from work. So there are lots of economic repercussions of people not having access to paid leave. But I think that the most the worst effects are for families who are the most disadvantaged.
So then, in your opinion, what's the best way to implement paid family leave? It all sounds good, but is this something all businesses of all sizes could do?
So that's a good question. I think you have to look at the benefits and the costs, and that's something that the AER Brookings Working Group has been researching over the last 3 years now. So we do understand that there are costs to businesses, and one of our proposals is to look at implementing paid family and medical leave in the US, but doing it through a payroll tax on just employees. Now, there are other ideas coming up. Senator Rubio has introduced a Social Security proposal, which is basically an individual benefit, so you can pull forward benefits that you're likely to get in retirement and use them today for parental leave. What I want to see is just a lot more discussion on how we do this. I understand that there are costs to doing it, and therefore the more ideas we have popping out, I think the better off we are.
I had mentioned that this month Oregon became the 8th state to adopt a paid family leave law. Paid family leave, though, has been a top priority for presidential advisor Ivanka Trump. Do you think there's enough momentum at this point to make this on the federal level, or to at least come close to making a law?
So I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing at the state level, and the fact that Ivanka keeps talking about it. President Trump has mentioned it in his budget. He mentions it in his State of the Union. So it does seem to be a priority for the administration, and I think this is the opportunity that where we can see some bipartisan effort along this issue, because Democrats have championed this for years, and now we have a Republican administration that's also keen to do something. I think this is a moment where it's ripe for reform. It's time we did something on paid leave, and I'm very encouraged to see all of this momentum building up.
Well, it's such an important subject when you think about what's best for families out there, especially for newer and younger families. Aparna Mathur, resident scholar with the American Enterprise Institute, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Archbishop Joseph Kurtz of Louisville has stepped down from leading the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops' Religious Liberty Committee as he undergoes treatment for bladder cancer. Bishop Robert McManus of Worcester, Massachusetts, will serve as the acting chair. Kurtz, who formerly served as president of the conference, said he had good cause for optimism. Up next, what Dr. Leana Wen's departure says about Planned Parenthood, and a look at a 14th century saint who's well known in Europe. Welcome back. The director of Arkansas's only abortion clinic says they may have to close their doors as a result of a new pro-life law. A federal judge yesterday heard a challenge to the state measure, which says only board-certified or board-eligible OBGYNs can perform abortions. The abortion clinic is pushing for the legislation to be overturned. The former president and CEO of the nation's largest abortion provider is speaking out about why she left her position. In an opinion piece published in the New York Times, Dr. Leana Wen cites philosophical differences for the split, writing, quote, "While the traditional approach has been through prioritizing advocating for abortion rights, I have long believed that the most effective way to advance reproductive health is to be clear that it is not a political issue, but a healthcare one." Joining me now is Catherine Hadro, host of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Catherine, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
In her piece, Dr. Wen writes that she wanted to promote Planned Parenthood by telling the story of all its medical services, but that she and her team faced, quote, daily internal opposition. What do you think? Why do you think she was met with so much resistance?
This gets to the heart of the debate within Planned Parenthood right now. Is their mission healthcare or abortion? In the past, Planned Parenthood has claimed or advertised in some way they provide mammogram services, for example. But that is a lie that has been widely debunked, and because of that, they faced a lot of criticism and backlash and controversy. So when Dr. Wen wanted to now start promoting other medical services that are not standard Planned Parenthood care, the New York Times reports that staffers were getting concerned and worried that this would again open them up to criticism because patients wouldn't be able to expect that.
It's so interesting to read about and get that insight from Dr. Wen in her own words. I want to read another line here from the op-ed in which she writes, "Perhaps the greatest area of tension was over our work to be inclusive of those with nuanced views about abortion." So what do you make, first off, of that statement, but then just the efforts that while she was head of the nation's largest abortion providers, to still try to at least talk to people who had a slightly different view?
This was striking to me because the previous president, Cecile Richards, was very dismissive of pro-lifers. So I was surprised to hear Dr. Wen sounded like she wanted to cultivate some dialogue with people who disagree with her. And I think it's a reminder, let's continue to pray that her eyes are open to the truth on the life issue. But I do need to note that Dr. Wen only listed pro-lifers that she met with as pro-lifers who still support abortion. So that's an oxymoron. That's not pro-life. Or pro-lifers who support Planned Parenthood. But Planned Parenthood is the nation's largest abortion provider, committing over 300,000 abortions in the U.S. alone every year. You can't be pro-life and support Planned Parenthood. So my hope for her now is that she sits across the table with someone who is truly 100% pro-life. And I know there's a long list of pro-lifers, myself included, who would be more than willing to do so.
It's a very interesting idea. What do we know about the new acting head of Planned Parenthood, Alexis McGill-Johnson?
I do want to say right here, Planned Parenthood was so quick to remove Dr. Wen's biography on their website and replace it with the acting president, Alexis McGill-Johnson. Johnson is a familiar face to Planned Parenthood. She's served on the board for nearly a decade, and she's also the co-founder of the Perception Institute, which is this anti-bias research group. But she is not a medical expert like Dr. Wen was, because why I think it's clear from all of this, if you want to work at Planned Parenthood, doctors need not apply.
You're speaking this week on your show with pro-life activist and former Planned Parenthood Clinic Director Abby Johnson about all of this. Tell us about it. Can't wait to hear the discussion.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to that. That'll air this week on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Abby, she climbed, she really rose at Planned Parenthood. She was a former clinic manager and then very publicly left about a decade ago. So grateful to speak with her and kind of, again, hear the inside of that culture, hear her reaction to Dr. Wen. And Abby as well very quickly reached out to Dr. Wen and said, hey, I'm here to speak with you. I know what those secret meetings at Planned Parenthood are like. We're here for you.
Okay, we'll be watching your show on Thursday night, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Catherine Hadro, host of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Finally tonight, today is the feast day of Saint Brigid of Sweden. The 14th century mystic is the patroness of Europe. She also founded the Brigentine religious order. The order's mother house is located in Rome's city center. The semi-cloistered nuns opened their convents and pilgrims to tourists to stay. In a nod to St. Brigid's visions of Jesus on the cross, their veils are adorned with a crown and 5 red dots representing his 5 wounds. St. Brigid was known for her calls for reform in the church. She died in Rome on July 23, 1373. And St. Brigid's devotion to Christ through his passion is a reminder for all of us how important it is to pray the Our Father and the Hail Mary. And that concludes our newscast for tonight. We thank you for watching. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll be back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night, and God bless.